I'm going to count down all the best B&M coasters that I personally rode. Before I begin, I wanted to mention I've been to Cedar Point back in 2004, but since it's been a while, I'm not going to include like Raptor, Rougarou, or Mantis since I rode it when it was named that. I'm also not going to include any defunct coasters like Dueling Dragons in this video. So enough chit-chatting, and let's just dive right in. So before I begin, I just wanted to say I suck when it comes to these voiceover things, but I just want to say that I've been on 32 different B&M coasters in total. I'm going to combine the clones into one spot, but I did want to mention I rode Batman the Ride at Great Adventure, Magic Mountain, over Texas, over Georgia, and Goliath at Fiesta, Texas. And also been on Superman Ultimate Flight at Great Adventure and over Georgia. So now since I got that out of the way, coming in at that 32 spot is Vortex at Carowinds. And after I got off Vortex, I felt like I got into a fist fight with myself. And it feels like I lost terribly. This is by far one of the worst coasters I think I ever rode, and it doesn't help that it's a stand-up coaster. Now coming in at the 31 spot is Firebird at Six Flags America. This coaster used to be called Apocalypse, and it was a stand-up coaster. I find the layout very boring, but this was B&M's first coaster, so I won't be too hard on them. Now coming in at the 30th spot is Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure. So if you couldn't already notice, I'm not really a big stand-up coaster fan. I find them more painful than fun. Green Lantern's rides vary for me for the most part. I don't really enjoy riding Green Lantern. I would rather than bring back Scream Machine, to be honest. But yeah. Coming in at the 29th spot is Scream at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I rode this back in 2019, and I found it to be pretty rough. It's a mirrored image of Medusa, and I was expecting a similar ride experience, but that wasn't the case. It's also not the prettiest coaster to look at, since it's pretty much in the parking lot. At least add like grass or some type of theming. Come on now, Six Flags. But yeah, let's get real. It is Six Flags we're talking about. But coming in at the 28th spot are the Superman Ultimate Flight clones. What's it called? I only like the pretzel loop since it's so intense, but besides that, there's not much really going on. I mean, I get it, you're cruising through the air like because you're Superman, but besides the pretzel loop, the rest of the layout's kind of boring in my opinion. Coming in at the 27th spot is Riddler's Revenge at Six Flags Magic Mountain. If this was a floorless coaster, I would have moved this up a bunch of spots most likely. The layout for Riddler's really good, and it's a shame that it's a stand-up coaster because I bang my head literally all over the place. Next at 26 is Georgia Scorcher at Six Flags over Georgia. Now this is my favorite stand-up coaster that I rode. It's actually not rough at all. I rode it back in 2019, so I'm not really sure how it's running now, but based off of those rides, I found it pretty fun. Now coming in at the 25th spot is Dominator at King's Dominion. Now before you guys want to kill me, let me explain why. I rode this in the pouring rain in April, so it was cold and I was in pain. So I'm sure if I ride it again, it will probably go up in my rankings, but I have to judge it off the rides that I got. Unfortunately, they were in the rain and kind of painful. Now at 24 is Hydra the Revenge at Dorney Park. This coaster is kind of underrated in my opinion. You get good hang time on the JoJo roll, and it has a unique layout for a floorless coaster. At the 23rd spot is Great Bear at HersheyPark. Another unique layout. I love the helix before you go down the drop. I wish Great Bear had a better ending, but it's still a really fun ride. Now coming in at the 22nd spot is Batman the Dark Knight at Six Flags New England. It feels like a short coaster, but don't let the small frame fool you. You get whipped around the inversions and you get good negative G's going through the barrel roll. Next, at 21, is Alpengeist at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. On paper, this should be my favorite inverted coaster, but I don't know, man. Like, there's something that's kind of forgettable, in my opinion. They definitely slowed the mid-course brake run down, so that kind of kills the ending half of the ride. Maybe I needed a few more rides on it to get a better feel. So maybe in the near future, I can head back to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. Coming in at the 20th spot is Medusa at Six Flags Great Adventure. This was the world's first floorless coaster, and I'm happy it's at my home park. It rarely gets long lines, so I like to marathon it as many times as I can. The new color scheme looks nice in my opinion. Next, at 19, is Afterburn at Carowinds. This is another coaster I thought I would like more, but some elements were forgettable. The Batwing part was my favorite, but it wasn't too intense like Montu is. Maybe this is another coaster I need to ride again to understand the hype. So maybe I'll make it out to Carowinds again in the near future, hopefully. Now coming in at 18 are the Batman the Ride clones. Even though this layout is cloned on multiple parks, it doesn't take away how intense they are. They are short and to the point, and I can dig it. Next at 17 is Intimidator at Carowinds. I love hypercoasters, and this isn't my favorite one, but it's still a fun ride. Get good pops of floater, and the trims don't really affect the ride for me. Now coming in at 16 is Talon at Dorney Park. This invert is underrated in my opinion. It has a unique layout, and the helix at the end is really intense. I moved this up in my rankings within the past few years for a reason. Told you guys I suck at these voiceover things. That's why I don't really do them often. Coming in at 15, that spot belongs to Griffon at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. I don't know why people hate on dive coasters so much. Yes, they are short, but coming down the first drops are so much fun, and Griffin's drop is no exception. The only reason it's not ahead of the next spot is because of theming. With that being said, at 14 is Sheikra at Busch Gardens, Tampa. I like Sheikra better than Griffon because I like the theming better, and it looks prettier in my opinion. I am a sucker for good theming. Next at 13 is Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. This was B&M's first hyper coaster. You don't get too much airtime like the newer B&M hypers, but I think the layout is a lot of fun, and I love dropping down next to the water and enjoying the views. Coming in at number 12 is Kraken at Seaworld Orlando. I do have to admit, this has gotten rough over the years. I'm not sure how it rides now since the paint job, but when I rode it back in 2021, I banged myself around a few times, but I still love the layout, and I love how it runs next to the water. Next at number 11 is Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Now if you want to ride one of the craziest elements on any coaster, then you need to experience Tatsu's pretzel loop. It's absolutely insane. I love how high you fly through the air, and you get great views of the park through a bird's eye. We made it to the top 10, guys, finally. So coming in at the 10th spot is Candymonium at HersheyPark. It's a fun ride. You get 2 spots of airtime going over the first hill and that smaller hill on the return trip. It feels like a short ride, but it's definitely one of my favorites. Next, at the 9th spot is my favorite floorless coaster, Superman Krypton coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. I love how you dive off the wall twice and you get views that are impeccable. I hope you made it back. I hope to make it back to Fiesta, Texas in the near future so I can grab a few more rides since it's been 5 years. Yeah, I suck at following the script. Yes, it's scripted, as you guys can tell, obviously. So coming in at the 8th spot is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This coaster will always have a place in my heart since it was my first coaster I rode that went over 200 feet. You get good floater airtime over the hills. Nitro night rides are my favorite since you travel through the trees. Highly recommend Nitro night rides, by the way. Next at number 7 is Kumba at Busch Gardens, Tampa. If you can tolerate how rough it is, then you're in for a treat. It makes each element so intense and whips you around the track. I grayed out a bunch of times throughout the ride, especially at Kumba's last upward helix. Coming in at the 6th spot is Manta at SeaWorld Orlando. Manta has the best queue line I've ever seen, and I love all the water effects. When you're coming off the mid-course, you drop down by the water, and if you stick your hand out, you actually feel the water. The near miss with the waterfall right after that element is one of the best near misses I ever experienced. Next at number 5 is Montu at Busch Gardens, Tampa. This is my favorite inverted coaster. I love the Batwing element because it feels like it's literally going to kill you. I love the theming, and I think the layout of this coaster is perfection. Coming in at the 4th spot is Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. I love how this coaster actually gives you a pop of ejector airtime and great floater over the hills. The ambience of this coaster is my favorite since it rides right next to the water. Next is Goliath at Six Flags over Georgia. This is another hyper that gives you ejector airtime. The last bunny hill before the brakes is insane. I love how it drops down by the road, and the helix it has is incredible as well. Coming in at number 2 is Fury 325 at Carowinds. I'm a sucker for a good hypercoaster, so I'm definitely a slut for a good Giga. So you get many pops of airtime, and I think the layout of Fury is genius. I think this is B&M's best layout they designed so far. Night rides on Fury are a little overhyped, but it's good to see the green lights light up. It looks really pretty. Now, the best B&M coaster I personally rode and sits at my number 1 spot is the Incredible Hulk coaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure. I love the audio effect they added to the coaster and the dive tire launch. I can't talk today. The dive tire launch to that barrel roll as the best first half I ever experienced on any coaster. Even though the second half isn't as strong, I'm putting this at number 1 because the first half is just that good. I always wanted to ride this as a kid, and when I was a kid, I was literally obsessed with it. I rode it with my brother like 11 times in a row with my parents back in the day. I love the effects, the color scheme, the sound the coaster makes as it flies by, the line cue, and of course the people I rode the Hulk with. Riding this as a kid has always been a special memory that stuck with me throughout the years. That is why I rank this coaster so high on my list. I know it's not the most intense B&M or the best B&M, but to me it has a special place in my heart, and that's what makes it my favorite. I never disrespect other people's opinions, and it's interesting for me to see what other people put their coasters and what lists they come up with over the course of their coaster journeys. So yeah, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider subscribing. With coaster season starting soon, I'm inviting all you guys to join me on some new adventures, and I do have some new park plans, which I'll probably announce later on once it gets a little closer. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next video. Peace out.